Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are setting our sights on a figure who occupies a really strange space in the global consciousness.
Yeah, he's sort of hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. You know, you see his face on currency. His name is on street signs from Paris to Buenos Aires. And there are these huge statues of him on horseback in Central Park, in Belgrave Square in London, and, well, pretty much every single town square in the southern cone of South America.
But he's not a Napoleon. He's not a Washington, at least not in the same global pop culture sense.
Right. Unless you grew up in Argentina or Chile, you might walk right past him without realizing that this specific guy on the horse orchestrated one of the most improbable military campaigns in human history.
It is a story that sounds like fiction, honestly. We're talking about José de San Martín. And the stack of sources we have today, biographical records, military archives, political correspondence, they all paint this picture of a man who just defies the standard revolutionary archetype.
He's not a chaotic firebrand.
Not at all. He's a demagogue. He's a chess player, a meticulous, patient strategist.
And he has this massive title, the Liberator of Argentina, Chile, and Peru. I mean, that is a lot of geography for one man.
It is huge. But the how is what we're here to unpack, because to earn that title, San Martin had to effectively dismantle the Spanish Empire in South America by doing the one thing they thought was, physically impossible.
He took a professional army.
Complete with heavy artillery, mind you.
And marched them over the Andes Mountains.
Which, just for context, are peaks that rival the Himalayas in terms of difficulty. We're not talking about rolling hills here.
No.
He crossed them to strike the empire from behind. It's the classic Hannibal crossing the Alps comparison. But many historians argue San Martin's feat was actually logistically harder.
Harder. Why?
Because of the specific altitude and, crucially, the total lack of resources he had to work with. He had to build his entire supply chain from scratch.
And then the kicker. This is the part that always gets me. After liberating half a continent at the absolute height of his power, he just walks away.
He resigns.
Leaves the continent and dies in obscurity in France.
Which is the ultimate twist. It's the Cincinnatus moment. You know, the Roman general who saved the Republic and went back to his farm.
Right. So our mission today is to understand that arc. How does a career Spanish officer become the empire's worst nightmare? How do you move an army over 4,000-meter peaks? And why, when you have the world at your feet, do you just walk away?
It's a huge story.
Let's jump into the sources. We have to start with the origin story, because that Spanish officer part is genuinely confusing. He's born in the Americas, right?
Right. He is born around 1778 in a place called Yapeyú. Today, that's in the Corrientes province of Argentina, right on the border with Brazil.
Okay.
But back then, it wasn't a city. It was a former Jesuit mission area. It is the frontier. His father was a Spanish official, a lieutenant governor there.
So he's a Criollo born in the Americas to Spanish parents.
Exactly. But here is the first twist. San Martin doesn't stay there. The family moves back to Spain when he is just 7 years old.
7. So his formative years, his education, his accent, it's all European.
Completely. They settle in Malaga. And this is crucial for understanding his later competence. He becomes a soldier at age 11. 11 years old. He joins the regiment of Murcia. This isn't a ceremonial role. He's a cadet in a world that is about to catch fire.
I mean, most kids that age are worried about math homework. He's learning to drill with a musket. It's a completely different world.
And he sees combat almost immediately. He fights in North Africa, Melilla, or Oran fighting against the Moors. He fights against the British for a time when Spain is allied with France. But the crucible, the thing that really makes him San Martin, is the Peninsular War.
Okay, so this is the era where Napoleon is just taking over everything.
Precisely. In 1808, Napoleon turns on his Spanish allies and invades Spain. The Spanish people rise up in this brutal guerrilla war, and San Martin is right in the thick of it.
He fights at the Battle of Belen in 1808. I see Belen highlighted in the notes here as a major turning point. Why was that battle so significant?
It was huge. It was the first time the Napoleonic Grand Army was defeated in open field combat. Up until then, Napoleon seemed, well, invincible.
Right, the myth of invincibility.
Belen shattered that myth. And San Martin was a hero there, a genuine hero. He was promoted to lieutenant colonel on the battlefield and awarded a gold medal. He is a rising star in the Spanish military establishment.
Okay, so paint the picture for me. He is 30-something years old. He has spent 20 years in the Spanish military. He has bled for Spain. He has fought for the king.
He's a decorated career officer.
And then, in 1812, he abruptly resigns, boards a ship called the George Canning, and sails to Buenos Aires to fight against the flag he just spent 2 decades defending.
It is the central paradox of his life.
Why? That's the big question. Why the switch? On paper, that looks like treason.
It does, and historians have debated this for 2 centuries. There are a few theories. The first one is simply nostalgia, the call of his native land. He was born there, after all.
That feels a bit romantic, doesn't it? For a guy who left at 7, I missed the Métis. Doesn't seem like enough to upend your entire life and career.
Agreed. It feels a bit thin for a hardened military strategist. So theory 2 is more cynical. British influence.
Okay.
We know he stopped in London on his way back. He met with Francisco de Miranda and other independent supporters there. Britain had a lot to gain from South American independence because it opened up trade routes that Spain had kept closed for centuries.
So the argument is he was an agent, or at least nudged in that direction by the British.
Right. Some argue San Martin was, if not an agent, at least encouraged by British interests.
But looking at your notes, you seem to favor the third theory.
I do. It's the conflict of ideas, or maybe better put, the ideological consistency theory. This one is the most compelling to me.
Okay, unpack that for me.
You have to remember, the war in Spain against Napoleon wasn't just about territory, it was about ideas. San Martin was fighting for national sovereignty and against tyranny. He was exposed to the Enlightenment ideas of constitutional government, liberty, citizenship. He was part of these secret societies, these Masonic-style lodges where they discussed these things.
So he was a liberal in the classic 19th century sense.
Precisely. But then, when the Spanish monarchy was restored, King Ferdinand VII basically tore up the liberal constitution they'd written and reinstated absolute rule. He crushed those values.
So the very thing San Martin fought for in Spain was betrayed by the Spanish king himself.
Exactly. So San Martin looks at Spain and sees a lost cause. Then he looks at South America, which is just starting to fight for independence, and he sees the continuation of the same fight.
That is a fascinating way to frame it. He didn't switch sides ideologically. He switched battlefields to keep fighting for the same principles. He was fighting against absolutism, whether the tyrant spoke French or Spanish.
Yes. He arrives in Buenos Aires in 1812, not as a traitor to his values, but as a man looking for a place to plant them. The location changed, but the enemy tyranny remained the same.
So he arrives in Buenos Aires in 1812. Is he welcomed with open arms? Here comes the hero from Berlin.
Not exactly. It's awkward. He has a thick Spanish accent. He looks and sounds like the enemy. The local government, the triumvirate, is a mess of competing factions. They don't trust him.
But his resume must have stood out.
It did. They were also desperate because their armies kept losing against the disciplined Royalists. So they look at his resume, Battle of Berlin, Lieutenant Colonel, and say, okay, prove it.
And he notices a problem right away, doesn't he? A military problem.
He does. He realizes Buenos Aires has plenty of enthusiasm and brave militiamen, but no professional cavalry. In European warfare, cavalry is the hammer. You need discipline, you need shock troops.
So he says, let me fix this.
He asks to form a new unit, the Regiment of Mounted Grenadiers.
The famous Granaderos.
Yes. And he builds this unit with obsessive detail. He selects the officers personally, he trains them in modern European tactics, he eats in the mess hall with them, he creates a strict code of honor. He's building a professional war machine in a land of amateur militias.
And he gets to test them pretty quickly at the Battle of San Lorenzo. The notes describe this as cinematic, and they aren't kidding.
It really is straight out of a movie. This is February 1813. The Spanish Royalists have a stronghold in Montevideo, and they keep sending ships up the Paraná River to pillage villages for supplies.
Right.
San Martin takes his new regiment and tracks them from the shore, moving only at night to stay hidden.
I love this image. The colonel on the convent rooftop watching the river at night with a spyglass.
Exactly. He hides his men inside the San Carlos convent in Santa Fe. He waits. At dawn, about 250 Royalists disembark. They think it's just another easy raid.
They have no idea what's waiting for them.
None. And San Martin launches a pincer movement, 2 columns of cavalry sweeping in from different sides to trap the Spanish against the river. A perfect ambush.
But it goes wrong for him personally, right? It almost ends right there.
Almost catastrophically wrong. San Martin leads the charge himself, which is already risky. His horse is shot out from under him. The horse falls on top of him, pinning his leg. He is trapped, helpless, in the middle of a melee.
Talk about a sitting duck.
A Royalist soldier rushes in to finish him off with a bayonet. He actually injures San Martin's face with a saber. He is seconds away from death.
Wow.
But then 2 of his soldiers intervene. Juan Bautista Cabral and Juan Bautista Baigorria. Baigorria kills the attacker, and Cabral, a man of African descent, pulls the heavy horse off San Martin.
And Cabral pays the ultimate price.
He does. Cabral was mortally wounded in the rescue. Legend says his dying words were, "I die happy, for we have beaten the enemy." Whether that's verbatim or not, his sacrifice saved the Liberator.
It gives you chills. It also proves to the locals in blood that San Martin isn't just some desk general from Spain. He's in the dirt, bleeding with them.
Exactly. It secured his reputation. But San Martin isn't just brave, he's strategic. After this, he is sent to take command of the Army of the North.
This was the main front of the war at the time, right? Trying to push north into Upper Peru, what's now Bolivia, to defeat the Spanish power center.
Right. The previous general, Manuel Belgrano, who is a brilliant patriot but not a trained soldier, had suffered some bad defeats there, so they send in the professional.
And San Martin goes up there, looks at the terrain, looks at the Royalist defenses, and realizes something crucial.
What's that?
He realizes it's a trap.
What's a trap?
Attacking the Royalist stronghold of Lima, Peru, by marching overland through the mountains of Upper Peru is suicide. The terrain is too harsh, the supply lines are too long, and the local population is not always friendly. The Royalists have it completely fortified.
So everyone has been banging their heads against this wall for years, and he realizes they need a totally different wall.
He realizes they need a backdoor. This is the aha moment. He concocts a new, radical plan. He decides, forget the north, we're going west.
West, into the Andes, the highest part of the Andes.
Yes, he decides to feign a defensive posture in the north, take a small army west, cross the Andes Mountains into Chile, liberate Chile from the Royalists.
Which is already a huge task on its own.
It is. And this is the kicker, build a navy in the Pacific and sail up the coast to attack Lima from the sea, where they'd least expect it.
That is incredibly ambitious. It's a logistical nightmare. Let's just cross the second highest mountain range on Earth with cannons and then learn to be sailors.
It's insane. And to make it happen, he resigns from the prestigious Army of the North and requests the governorship of the Cuyo province. That's the region around Mendoza, right at the foot of the Andes.
He's basically picking his own staging ground.
Right. So this brings us to part 3, the mastermind of Cuyo. Because he doesn't just show up in March, he spends years preparing.
From 1814 to 1817, San Martin essentially turns the province of Mendoza into a war machine. It's total mobilization. The sources describe it like he built an entire economy just for this campaign.
What kind of infrastructure are we talking about here? This isn't an industrial region.
No, it's an agricultural one. But he finds the talent. He had a friar, Fray Luis Beltran, who was a genius with mechanics, a self-taught engineer.
A priest?
A priest running a cannon factory. They built a foundry to cast cannons and cannonballs. They mined the local mountains for lead and copper. They collected sulfur for gunpowder. He had the women of Mendoza weaving uniforms and stitching the flag for the new army.
And he had to deal with the social structure, too. We see notes here about him drafting slaves. That must have been controversial.
Very. This is a significant part of the social contract he established. He offered freedom to slaves who joined the Army of the Andes. He originally took men aged 16 to 30, but he eventually expanded that from 14 to 55.
The local aristocracy, the landowners, must have been furious. That was their property.
They were. But San Martin was the governor and the military commander. He was adamant. He said, "The freedom of the country is the supreme law." He integrated these freed men into the infantry battalions. A huge portion of the Army of the Andes was of African descent.
While he's building this machine, he's also playing politics. The Congress of Tucumán is meeting in 1816. He is putting immense pressure on them to declare independence. Why the rush?
It's a legal necessity. And a moral one.
Yeah.
He writes to the delegates, basically saying, "I cannot cross these mountains as a rebel chieftain. If I do, and we are captured, we will be executed as insurgents.
But if they are a nation,
I need to cross as the general of a sovereign nation. That distinction matters for international law, for the treatment of prisoners, for everything." They finally declared independence on July 9th, 1816, largely due to his pressure.
Now, here is a detail from the notes that surprised me. The expert note says San Martin was actually a monarchist. That seems counterintuitive.
He was. And this surprises a lot of people today. We assume revolutionary means Republican, but San Martin, along with Manuel Belgrano, actually supported the idea of a constitutional monarchy.
That feels contradictory. Why would they want a king after fighting to get rid of one?
They looked at the chaos in France after their revolution. They looked at the infighting and civil war already starting in Buenos Aires. They wanted stability.
So it was a pragmatic choice.
Entirely. They believed a constitutional monarchy was the best way to keep the peace and, crucially, to get recognition from Europe, which was entirely monarchist at the time. Belgrano even proposed crowning a descendant of the Incas.
An Incan king. Serious.
Yes, it was called the Inca Plan. It would have united the indigenous populations of the Andes with the revolutionary cause. It was a serious proposal. It didn't happen. The elites in Buenos Aires scoffed at it. But it shows that San Martin was a pragmatist. He didn't care about the form of government as much as the outcome. Independence and order.
Okay, so he has the army, he has the flag, he has the plan. Part 4, the crossing of the Andes. Let's get into the details here.
The logistics of this are, well, mind-boggling. We are talking about 5,000 men. But it's not just the men. He also has 10,000 mules and 1,600 horses.
10,000 mules.
And he has to move heavy artillery over passes that sit at 4,000 meters. That's 12,000 feet above sea level. You have to disassemble the cannons, load them onto mules, and reassemble them on the other side.
And the survival rates were not great.
They were brutal. The conditions were freezing at night, scorching sun by day. The air is so thin, the soldiers suffered from soroche altitude sickness, headaches, vomiting, exhaustion.
And the animals.
Of the 10,000 mules, less than half reached Chile. Of the 1,600 horses, only about 500 arrived in fighting condition. The rest just fell off cliffs or died from exhaustion.
The source material mentions they ate a diet heavy in garlic and onions. Is that true?
Yes, garlic and onions. It was part of a special ration called Valdiviano. San Martin believed raw garlic and onions helped combat the altitude and the cold. The army practically smelled its way across the Andes.
I hope the Royalists didn't smell them coming.
Well, San Martin made sure they didn't know where they were coming from. This is the other side of the crossing the intelligence warfare. He engaged in what they called the War of Zappa, or the War of Spies.
So it wasn't just a brute force march.
No, it was a masterpiece of deception. He used spies, he spread fake maps, he sent people to spread rumors in Chile that he was crossing in the south, or maybe the north. He wanted to confuse them.
And he split the army.
He did. This was key. He divided his forces into 6 different columns using different passes. Los Patos, Uspallata, and 4 smaller ones. It forced the enemy to divide their forces.
There's a story here about him meeting with indigenous leaders.
Yes, the Pahuanche leaders in the south. He held a big conference with them and asked for permission to cross through their land, knowing full well that they would immediately go tell the Royalists.
That is clever. He feeds them disinformation through a channel they trust.
Exactly. The Royalist governor in Chile, Marco del Pont, panicked. He scattered his forces to defend every possible pass, which meant he was weak everywhere. When San Martin's main column came down the slopes, the Royalists were scrambling to regroup.
Which leads us to Part 5, the Liberation of Chile. The army reunites on the slopes on the Chilean side, and we get the Battle of Chacabuco in February 1817.
They come down from the mountains, exhausted, half-starved, and have to fight immediately, and it almost goes wrong.
How so?
San Martin has a plan to wait for all the troops to be in position. But his ally, the Chilean Bernardo O'Higgins, who is brave but, incredibly impulsive, charges too early.
The friction of war.
It is. O'Higgins gets his division pinned down. He risked getting wiped out. San Martin sees this, draws his saber, and has to commit the reserves earlier than planned. He risks everything to save O'Higgins.
And it works.
The move works. The Royalist line breaks. They march into Santiago as heroes.
And here is a real character moment for San Martin. The people of Chile are ecstatic. They offer him the position of Supreme Director of Chile. Basically, you freed us, you rule us.
And he says no. Flat out no.
Why? That's immense power to turn down.
Because his goal isn't Chile. Chile is a stepping stone. His goal is Peru. And he knows if he starts governing Chile, he'll get bogged down in local politics. He hands the job to O'Higgins and says, let's get back to work. We need a fleet.
But the war in Chile wasn't quite over. There's a twist in the script called Cancha Rayada.
Yes. In 1818, the Royalists regrouped in the south and launched a surprise night attack at Cancha Rayada. It was total chaos, friendly fire, panic in the dark. San Martin tried to organize a defense, but they were overrun.
And the rumors start flying.
Rumors spread instantly that San Martin was dead and O'Higgins was dead. Imagine the morale blow. The Liberator is dead. The army is scattered.
It could have been the end of the revolution right there.
It could have. But a subordinate general, Los Harris, managed to keep about 3,500 men together and retreat in good order. San Martin survived, reunited with them, and had to rebuild the army's morale in record time. He famously rode into Santiago and told the people, the army is not defeated.
And just a few weeks later, they face off again at the Battle of Maipú. This is the turning point.
Maipú is the definitive battle for Chilean independence. San Martín watches the Royalist formation. General Osorio is commanding them, and he spots a flaw. He sees Osorio moving his troops clumsily across the front, exposing a flank.
The sources quote him saying something like, "Osorio is clumsy, today's triumph is ours, the sun is witness." That is some serious confidence.
It was a brutal fight, much bloodier than Chacabuco. The Reserve Grenadiers, San Martin's elite unit that he built from scratch, had to break the elite Spanish Burgos regiment, but they did it.
And the climax of that day is famous.
The embrace of Maipú. O'Higgins, who had been wounded at the previous battle, rides out to meet San Martín on the battlefield, his arm in a sling, and they embrace. Chile is free.
So Chile is secured. Now, the final boss level, Peru.
But now the math gets really bad. The viceroy in Peru has something like 23,000 soldiers. San Martín, after all the losses, has maybe 4,000 men.
You can't win that fight. Not kinetically.
Real.
Not head on.
No, you can't just march in and shoot. So San Martín pivots to psychological warfare. First, he needs that navy he imagined years ago.
And where does that come from?
Well, Buenos Aires is broke and distracted by civil wars, so they aren't sending money. He has to rely on Chilean funding, and he hires a fascinating character, Lord Thomas Cochrane.
Who was he?
A disgraced British admiral. A brilliant naval commander, but a difficult, prickly mercenary. They build a fleet and sail north.
And this is where San Martín gets really clever. He lands in Peru, but he doesn't attack Lima directly.
No. He engages in what he called a war of opinion. He knows he can't defeat the army, so he has to defeat the mindset. He has to win the people over.
So what does he do?
He lands his small army and refuses to attack the city. Instead, he sends agents to the indigenous villages to incite rebellion. He spreads propaganda. He promises freedom to slaves who join him. He blockades the port to cut off food supplies to Lima.
He's starving them out and waiting for them to crumble from the inside. He's laying siege to their will to fight.
Exactly. He wants the viceroy to leave on his own. And it works. In July 1821, the viceroy abandons Lima because the city is turning against him and he's running out of food. San Martín marches in without firing a shot and declares independence on July 28, 1821.
That is Sun Tzu-level strategy. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting.
It is. He is named Protector of Peru. And he immediately starts implementing those liberal reforms we talked about.
The Freedom of Wounds Law. Can you explain that one again?
It was a gradual abolition of slavery. It meant that while existing slaves weren't automatically freed, that would have caused immediate economic collapse and revolt by the landowners. Any child born to a slave mother was born free. It was a way to end slavery over a generation.
And he also gets rid of the Inquisition.
Abolished the Inquisition, banned corporal punishment. He abolished the mita, which was a system of forced indigenous labor. He was trying to build a modern liberal state.
But governing is harder than conquering. Things start to get sticky here. He has friction with Cochrane.
Major friction. Cochrane wants to attack, plunder, destroy the Spanish fleet aggressively. San Martín is cautious, patient. Cochrane eventually gets fed up, basically takes the fleet and leaves, so San Martín loses his naval support.
And there's a weird military moment mentioned in the outline, the controversial non-battle. What happened there?
Yes, the Canterac affair. A royalist army led by General Canterac marches right past Lima. San Martín has his troops ready. His officers are begging him, let us attack, we have them. And San Martín does nothing. He lets them pass.
Why? That's baffling.
His officers were baffled. Some historians think San Martín believed attacking would cost too many lives, and he could just maneuver them into surrendering later. Others think he lost his nerve or was suffering from health issues. He had chronic ulcers and rheumatism. He was physically breaking down by this point.
But the effect on his own men must have been devastating.
It severely damaged his standing with his own army. They thought he was weak or indecisive.
And this leads us to the beginning of the end, the Guayaquil Conference.
This is the moment. It's 1822. San Martín is in a tough spot. He's losing support from Buenos Aires. Cochrane has left with the fleet. His army is tired and grumbling. And from the north comes Simon Bolívar,
the other liberator.
Bolívar has just swept down through Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador. He has momentum, he has a fresh army, and he has the full support of his government in Gran Colombia. He is at the height of his power.
So they meet in Guayaquil, Ecuador. What happens in that room?
That is the great mystery. It was a closed-door meeting. No aides, no witnesses, no minutes taken. They met for 2 days.
To be a fly on that wall.
We can infer what happened based on the outcome. San Martin likely asked for reinforcements to finish the war in Peru. Bolivar likely said he couldn't spare enough. San Martin may have offered to serve under Bolivar to be his second in command.
The liberator of the South serving under the liberator of the North. That's a huge ego check.
It is, but Bolivar likely refused. The consensus is that Bolivar felt that two suns could not shine in the same sky. He knew that as long as San Martin was there would be divided loyalties.
So San Martin makes a choice.
He realizes that for Peru to be fully liberated, one of them has to go. And since Bolivar has the momentum and the resources, San Martin decides it has to be him.
Oh.
He sacrifices his glory for the cause. He resigns as protector of Peru, leaves his army, and sails away. He leaves the final victory and all the credit to Bolivar.
That is heartbreaking, actually, to do all that work, cross the mountains, build the fleet, and then walk away right before the finish line because you know it's the only way the team wins.
It's a rare moment of humility in history. Most conquerors cling to power until they are dragged out. San Martin walked away.
So he goes into exile, part 7. He tries to go back to Argentina first, right?
He does, but Argentina is a mess. It's torn apart by civil wars between Federalists and Unitarians. They want him to lead a faction.
Of course they do. He's the biggest military hero they have.
San Martin is heartbroken. He refuses to draw his sword against his own countrymen. He says, "My sword will never be drawn against my fellow countrymen."
So he takes his daughter, Mercedes, and goes to Europe.
And he lives a quiet life. Brussels, Paris, Boulogne-sur-Mer. He's not living like a king. He's actually somewhat strapped for cash at times. He just watches South American politics from a distance.
There is a story about him almost fighting a duel.
Yes, with Bernardino Rivadavia, a political enemy from Buenos Aires who came to Europe and slandered him. San Martin was old and sick, but he was still a soldier. He challenged him. Friends had to talk him out of it, thankfully.
And he developed a strange friendship with Juan Manuel de Rosas, the governor of Buenos Aires, right?
He did. Rosas was a controversial figure, a federalist strongman, a dictator to some. But San Martin admired how Rosas defended Argentina against foreign interventions, specifically the French and British blockades in the 1830s and 40s.
So he respected Rosas for protecting national sovereignty.
Exactly. In his will, San Martin bequeathed his famous curved saber, the one he carried across the Andes to Rosas, as a sign of respect for defending the homeland.
And he finally passed away in 1850.
In Boulogne-sur-Mer, France. He was blind by the end, age 72. He died quietly, far from the Andes.
But he didn't stay in France forever.
No. His final wish was to be buried in Buenos Aires. It took 30 years because of the endless civil wars, but in 1880, his remains were repatriated. He now rests in a massive mausoleum in the Metropolitan Cathedral in Buenos Aires.
So what does this all mean? When we look at his legacy, what's the final takeaway?
He's the Saint of the Sword. That's the nickname he earned. And it encapsulates his legacy perfectly. He was a soldier who fought for liberty, not for power.
The evidence is there.
He had the opportunity to be a dictator in Chile. He said no. He had the opportunity to cling to power in Peru. He walked away. He refused to fight in civil wars.
It's the restraint that makes him special.
Exactly. In a region that would later be plagued by caudillos and military dictatorships, San Martin set an example of military subordination to the greater good, and an example that wasn't always followed, unfortunately.
It really makes you wonder. And here's a provocative thought to leave you with. How different would South America look today if San Martin had stayed? Or, even more intriguingly, what if his Inca plan had worked? What if South America had established constitutional monarchies instead of unstable republics? Would the last 2 centuries of history have been more stable?
It's one of the great what-ifs of history. We'll never know.
If you are ever in New York, go to Central Park South. If you are in D.C., check Virginia Avenue. Look up at the guy on the horse. It's not just a statue. It's a man who crossed the impossible and then walked away from the glory.
A true deep dive.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.